Afternoon, CHTV fans. I'm Joseph Randolph.
I'm Brian Maafi.
And this is another episode of Packers Draft Room. We are covering tight ends today. It's not a whole lot of them today. What would you say about the class, Brian?
Yeah, it's basically like a two-guy class, basically Bowers and Sanders, and then just kind of a bunch of dudes.
Yeah, it's Brock Bowers and it's everybody else. And we'll just dig right into it. Brock Bowers probably last year was probably a top 10 prospect if he could have declared as a true sophomore. This year, he is probably still, as far as overall prospects, a top 10 guy. Now, as a tight end, is he going to go that high? I don't think so because he's not necessarily as long, but he has the movement skills. He has the ball skills. He's going to be a problem in the NFL for somebody. It's just a matter of how people evaluate him because he's a little bit shorter. He's only about 6'3". Had he been probably even 6'4", he probably would have cemented himself as a top 10 pick. But now as a 6'3" guy, I think somewhere he's going to be top 20. How would you say it, Brian?
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit higher on him. I say top 15. But yeah, I think he's just like a versatile playmaker, really, which we haven't seen in the NFL as far as that tight end position where you can move him around in the formation. You can have him in the backfield. You can have him carrying the ball. You can throw him, basically wide receiver screens. You can play him out wide. You can play him inside. You can play him all over. And, he's just a playmaker.
Yeah, I wonder, and some scouts will agree with me, he was schemed a little bit. Not a lot. I don't want to take too much away from Bauer's game, but he was schemed a little bit. There were some definite mismatches, and obviously in the college game, it's really about just being bigger and stronger and faster versus there's a little bit more of a nuance in the pro game. So a lot of times I think Bowers was just able to just dominate his opponents just because he was just the faster, quicker guy. And then they just made sure that Georgia put him in the position to where he was able to just get on top of folks easily. He won't see that quite as easily in the NFL, especially given that defenders will be just as big, if not bigger, and possibly faster. He does have to work on the run game aspect, like most tight ends out of college. He's a decent run blocker, but there will be some additional work needed there. Any further comments from you, Brian?
Not really, no. But like I said, he definitely gives effort as a blocker in the run game and in pass pro. So that's always a thing you look for, and it's a plus. I think it's just a matter of him working at it and getting better at it. But yeah, I think he's going to be the type of tight end we haven't seen in the NFL in a long time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him. Hopefully not in the NFC North, but I look forward to seeing what he can do in the pro game. The next guy who does fit the mold of the traditional tight end, but has some wiggle to him, is Penn State's Theo Johnson. I kind of came on late for Theo. I didn't really like him going, out the gate. A lot of these Penn State playmakers have had up and down success in the NFL. And he really shocked me with his testing. I think the best tester for the tight end class this year. He doesn't look good on tape by any means, but if you look at some of the tape, you've come to find out that Theo, he's not going to blow you away immediately. He's kind of the guy where if you give him a seam to run, he'll eventually get loose. So I did like him in the Senior Bowl. He did get open quite a bit. Just not maybe the shifty guy that you're thinking of, but I mean, almost a perfect 10 RAS at 9.98. But again, like once he gets able to build up that speed, he could definitely be a problem. How did you evaluate him, Brian?
Yeah, he's just kind of another one of those Penn State guys that we happen to have every year. Their production is kind of minimal or kind of average or middling or what have you, but they're always freak athletes that go to the combine and test out like freaks, just like all the other, the two edge rushers this year are freak athletes and so on and so forth. So he's your traditional Penn State guy, where he's a freak athlete, but the production was kind of minimal. But I mean, he still showed the potential on film. He's a big, long dude. He's a decent blocker. Still getting better at that. But I think part of the reason he didn't have a super lot of production was he kind of shared the tight end role. Especially last year, he was basically like the number 2 guy / 3 guy. This year, he kind of shared the number 1 spot. But so I think that kind of affected his production a bit. But he's, like I said, he's not a bad blocker. He's still getting better at it. And then his production, I think he'll be a better producer in the NFL than he was at college.
Yeah, it's not about what you do in college. It's all about the projection. He's not a hard projection. He ran the fastest 40 time in the class at 4.57. It's just a matter of, cleaning up the run blocking aspect of the game, which, again, tight ends typically need, and just really giving an opportunity. I kind of struggle with his projection as far as his value. I really think that he's probably going to go early 3rd. And I know that sounds crazy because you see Brock Bowers possibly going somewhere between top 15, top 20, and then not seeing another tight end until the 3rd round. I'm really just going to say that teams are going to game the system here. And then it's just not the fact that Theo doesn't deserve to be called sooner than that, but it's just the fact that there's going to be runs. Again, the quarterback class, the receiving class, the offensive line class, they're going to push these guys down. Theo may just be a top 50 player, but it's just the fact that I think some runs will probably push him maybe into the 60s or maybe even into the 70s. It's going to be something interesting to watch to see when the next tight end after Brock Bowers gets called. Where do you look at it, Brian?
I think just because it's a weak class, he might actually get pushed up because teams might think, well, crap, Brock is already gone. We need a tight end. There's basically with Sanders or Theo Johnson. Oh, well, we better take one now before, when our next pick comes up, neither might not be there. So I could see him going in the 2nd round just because of how poor the class is overall.
I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the back end of the 2nd. It just really depends on that run. It just really depends. And we'll go to the next guy we've already mentioned twice, essentially, and that's Ja'Tavion Sanders from Texas. He's our 50-50 contested catch specialist of this year's class. Lines up opposite of the wide receivers at Texas, was able to high point some balls off over corners, safeties, and linebackers. He has a very, very quick get up speed, which is different than Theo. Despite being slower than Theo, based on the 40 time, he gets to top speed quicker. And when you got kind of a guy who's 6'4", 6'5", getting the speed quickly and can overwhelm a smaller defensive back or a linebacker who's maybe not as fleet as foot. And he had the production in the red zone as well. I believe I have him at 6 touchdowns in the red zone. I think he's probably in the NFL more a traditional wide that you maybe can flex here and there. It just depends on if that quick acceleration is going to still win in the NFL. I don't have a full confidence yet that that's necessarily going to happen. Would you say the same, Brian?
Pretty much. I mean, I think you could probably play him in some H-back packages because he's not super tall, and you can get him out in space moving, and he can kind of block on the move and stuff like that. Because he's like 6'4", 245. So, and he didn't run as fast as people thought, but of course, like you said, he's more of a he's got more explosion in his body. He's more of a quick accelerator, not really a long speed guy. But yeah, again, like I said, I think it's between him and Theo for that tight end 2 spot. It just depends on how teams see them, 2 of them. If they want the more versatile guy or the more true wide tight end, type of guy or whatever. But I think, again, he could go, depending again on how teams view him, he could go in the 2nd or 3rd round. Just depends on what teams fall in love with him.
I'm going to list Theo as number 2 just off of the height and the speed, the long speed. I think Sanders may be a zone eater kind of guy in the NFL, where if the defense is in zone, if you can get to the hole in the zone quickly, maybe break a tackle or 2, that may be how he earns his living. But Theo, being the taller athlete, I think he's gonna, granted he's a little bit of a slow builder, but if you can get a deep seam route or a deep corner or post, I think that's the matchup I would prefer, especially when you're talking about a long ball. If the guy who's 2-3 inches taller can get up there and get it, I'm gonna want that guy more than I can the quick catch specialist. That's just me. Pick your poison. But I can see either or in the back of the second. I think the third is probably where they go, but again, it really just depends. I'm expecting some runs that are going to push these guys down. But like you said, whenever Theo or Jatavian goes, there's going to be a sense of urgency. I hate to remind Packers of a dark day when we took Myers, and then almost immediately the Chiefs traded up, and we know how that goes. But that could be a central thing as well. So we could see that same thing with these two. There's another guy who probably should be in this conversation, but unfortunately his season was cut short, and that's Iowa's Eric All. All is all around a pretty decent tight end. He's following in those traditional Iowa George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson footsteps. And it's unfortunate to see he only played half the season. Yeah, and if you know anything about Iowa football, they need every offensive playmaker they can get, especially when you're playing defensive backs to play offense. But we'll cover that another time. But Eric All, I like him. I mean, he does a decent amount of everything. Obviously he's still hurt, still recovering. I don't think we're going to be able to see him at a pro day. He probably will be one of the upper tier guys that gets called in for workouts privately for teams, so they can see the medical. They can have him probably do some workouts. He was, I believe, at the combine for interviews, but I don't think he did anything more than that. So
Right.
Maybe in another month, maybe just about 2 weeks before the combine, the draft rather, maybe he can do a little bit of running, something to give teams the confidence, like, hey, this is what we want. Brian, what's your evaluation?
Yeah, he was a Michigan transfer. So he missed a good chunk of 2022, I believe, most of the year, if not all the year. And so him missing time today again this year kind of hurts him. Teams might look at him as kind of injury prone and stuff like that. But he's got some potential. We'll see if he, once he gets healthy and if he can maybe work out or something like that. And Iowa was pretty bad on offense this past year. But he was probably one of the better receivers they had. Sadly, he had like just 21 catches on the year though. But yeah, he's got some potential if he can get healthy and show the NFL he can play and stuff.
Yeah, this was probably me a long projection for All. Kind of hoping he can shake the injury bug, getting the right, training and conditioning team to keep him on the field. Mm-hmm. I think, and this is where the drop off is real for the tight end class. I think Eric All, if he can work out, can possibly hear his name called around the 4th round. I think it's a possibility. I know there's not a lot of tape. The 21 catches I saw was not a lot. I'm like, there's something there. Somebody will fall in love with it other than me. I think he might be a 4th round pick. Brian, you look like you're about to say a 7th round pick.
No, not that late, but yeah, like I said, just the injuries, him not really playing basically the last 2 years, or playing half a season the last 2 years. I think probably 5th, but we'll see. I think depends on if he can actually show up for a workout and get some workouts in, get some teams interested.
Not playing a lot, that means he's fresh. So all he needs is just a chance. I'm solid with the 4th. There was another guy that played a lot actually, and it was a primary weapon, and that's Jared Wiley out of TCU. Wiley is that traditionally, long tight end. He's got some speed to him. I think he's about a 4.61. He tested pretty well. I don't want to say he's number 4 on the list with a 9.71 RAS. He's a target eater. I wouldn't necessarily say he's overly fast, wouldn't say he's overly quick, but he knows how to get open. So I think he's a guy that, between All and Wiley, that's probably your second tier of dudes. And I think Wiley, depending on if Eric's not called in the fourth, I certainly think Wiley will be called in the fourth. And at that point, if you're looking at for guys that are ready to play out the gate, not necessarily be your starter, but maybe your tight end too, or maybe your guy that you want to bring it into the red zone, because Wiley definitely made his work felt in the red zone. This is where you're going to want this guy. What would you say, Brian?
Yeah, I would like him. He was a Texas transfer, so another one of those guys that transferred out of Texas. Yeah, he's long, like you said. He's kind of a little bit of a linear build. So he's kind of a tight end you bring. He's kind of like one of those seam buster type tight ends. You get him down the field and just running, and you can use his size and his long reach. He's got over 33-inch arms, so he's got that long reach and he can get those balls and stuff like that. He's a decent blocker. Of course, like all college tight ends can be better. But he was pretty good this past year, and I think it was his best year. And yeah, I think he can go fourth round pretty easily.
I like it. We haven't really talked about the Packers. If there was, and I don't think it's gonna happen for the Packers as far as tight end for this year. But this is probably if there's any fans at home hoping like, is there hope for a tight end? This is probably what we're looking at here. We're still hoping for those multiple tight end sets, but we just took two really promising tight ends. I can't say that we'll see any tight ends called this year, but if there was a chance, this is probably, again, the drop off gets really real after the fourth round. So if there was a chance, I'd say these would be the guys to do it. I'm going to make another long projection with this next guy, and that's really just because of testing, and that's Illinois' Tip Reiman. Reiman is the second best tester. He's neck and neck with Theo Johnson, posting a 9.92. Not necessarily. I didn't see it materialize on tape though. But then Illinois, after the massive haul of class they had last year, maybe just not enough, talent on the offense to really get going. But I think, when you get a guy with almost a perfect 10 test score, folks are going to be intrigued. So, again, it's not necessarily the stats you put up in college, but what you can project to the next level. But unfortunately, while with Theo Johnson, who tested just a 100th point ahead of Reiman, and you did see some of that athleticism materialize, I didn't see that as much with Reiman. Had a little bit of the yips, and obviously blocking is not his forte. And for a guy of his size, as I have him at 6'5", it's not a guarantee he's going to come down with the ball if he's going to be challenged. So with that, I have him possibly in the 5th, maybe trending towards the 6th. Brian, you have more to add?
Just a guy who tested. I think he's just one of those. What do they call it? Looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. That old saying. Not that he's afraid to play, but it's more just like he tests really well, but you watch him play, you just don't see it. You just don't see the athleticism on film. He wasn't that great of a blocker, and he's a huge dude. He's like 270. He was like 271 at the combine. So it's pretty impressive. So you would think someone that big would be a good blocker, but he's not. He's kind of just an okay blocker. And then his receiving production was pretty minimal. He had like 200 yards or something like that this year, 203 yards, and he had 3 touchdowns. For a guy that big, he should have more touchdowns. I think he's, like I said, he's just one of those guys that tests really well, but on film and playing, he's just kind of like a probably bottom of the roster type guy that maybe you can develop, maybe you can find a way to get the athleticism to come out. But he's already like a 6-year senior or something like that, so I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah, I like I said, I'm looking at the 6 probably. I think the testing might, somebody's like, well, maybe if we can get him in here, we can work with him, something will happen. I think, somebody's going to be interested. Hell, it may even be the Packers. Like, we'll stash him on the practice squad for 5 years and see what we have. But yeah, I'm thinking, you can be fast, you can be big and be strong, but you got to be able to put it together on the field. I think he's probably a late, day 3 guy. Now, there's a guy who's much smaller than Reiman who played like a monster, and I was really crying my eyes out when he actually did, go to the combine. And that's Colorado State's Dallin Holker. He was a man among boys at the Shrine Bowl. He essentially was the number 1 receiving option for his team, and he pretty much dominated in the first quarter. And I guess there's gentleman rules in the All-Star games. You can't just wallop an opponent. So they pulled him out. He played like a little bit into the second half here and there. If they needed a first down, whatever the case may be. But he definitely looked the part of a starting tight end, but he's unfortunately a little short at 6'3". He's following in that mode of the Trey McBride, productive tight ends at Colorado State. Over 750 receiving yards. I mean, he put on a show. He's a good guy in the locker room. And I just don't know if, about being a little undersized, if he's going to, hear his name called early or not. I think he didn't test well either. I think he's probably maybe the back of the 5th. If you think like maybe the testing was maybe a fluke, and maybe he's a little bit stronger than that, maybe a little bit faster than that. Again, he could be a guy that I think that's going to be like a private workout dude that maybe he can improve his stock if he just does a little bit better with the testing. What about you, Brian?
Yeah, like you said, he was playing in the Mountain West, so he was playing against. Mountain West isn't that bad that some people make it out to be, but it's still not the greatest competition. But still, he produced. He came out to be 6'3", 240, so a little on the smaller side, but he has pretty long arms at 33 inches, so that's pretty long arms, especially for his height. That I think that allow you to kind of split him out at times and stuff like that, like a wide receiver. Let him go against some safeties and stuff like that, because he's probably too big for a lot of safeties. So I think he might be able to get some mismatches there. So I just he's just blocking obviously is not his forte, but I think he was a guy you can use him in certain packages. You kind of move around, use him as a receiving threat, like I said, in the slot and stuff like that, and then you can of course attach him to the line at times too. Is in of course his production too is a positive too, and his athletic testing was okay. It wasn't terrible or anything like that. I think his explosion drills were pretty good, so I think he shows pretty quick on the field. But yeah, I think probably 4th, 5th round probably is probably where he goes.
You're gonna upgrade him to the 4th? I like it. I would. I said I really, really like this. Is one of my favorites. My favorite day 3 dudes. But I had to kind of pull back on the testing. I think it's possible. Yeah, mismatch on a safety, mismatch on a linebacker. Maybe a guy if you know how to scheme it right, could be a red zone threat with the long arms. When you have long arms, it means you have a long, big catch radius. So maybe, sideline throws that maybe somebody made other, a shorter dude or maybe a person with not as long arms can not grab. He can. I like it in the 5th. I like him in the 5th. It'd be nice if he went in the 4th. Maybe, the Josiah DeGuara role that, didn't quite pan out for the Packers. Maybe we see that with Holker. Because this is our range right here, Packer fans. This is our range. And probably the next guy who's probably going to be the end of the Packers range is Minnesota's Brevan Spann-Ford. Now, most of us know TE to stand for tight end, but in the mold of Spann-Ford, TE stands for tackle eligible, because this guy is huge. I think he slimmed down for the Senior Bowl, but I swear he was probably paying at 275 or bigger, during the regular season for the Golden Gophers. This is a guy that you put in, and the ref said, "Hey, this guy's eligible." And when he's eligible, we really do mean he's eligible. Not overly fast, not overly quick, but when you're that big, that big, that wide, whatever you want to call it, I've got him at just right under 6'7", and I believe he actually plays at 270. Long arms at 30 over, I think almost a 33.5-inch arms. So, if he doesn't work out at tight end, I think we're looking at a tackle. We just stash him. I don't think he would even last in the practice squad. Somebody else is going to take him and just see what's there. But this is the Mercedes Lewis of tight ends for this year's class. What would you say, Brian?
Yeah, I think I kind of compared him to Mercedes Lewis, but like a slightly older Mercedes Lewis, because Mercedes was a sneaky athlete on the field and stuff like that as a receiver and stuff like that. This guy's not really that sneaky of an athlete. Again, he's not bad, of course. He ran a 4.77, which is for today's tight end, that's a little on the slow side. But he came in about 260 at the combine, but he played it closer to 270. Almost 6'7", and yeah, he's just a big, huge dude. He's a blocker. That's his best skill. But you can do things with him that you did with Mercedes, is you can occasionally sneak him out there because nobody's going to pay attention to him as a receiver, and they're going to basically forget he's there. They're going to forget to cover him. So you can do those little things where you kind of have him block and then leak out type thing, and then teams will just kind of forget about him. They'll think he's still blocking, and you get him those catches, and you can rumble around for 10, 15 yards or whatever, something like that. But he's not going to be a major producer in the passing game. Again, like Mercedes is towards the end of Mercedes' career, his calling card will be, blocking.
Yeah, that's exactly how we scored at the Senior Bowl. I thought he was a tackle, and then ball hiked. He held his block for maybe a second and a half. He pulled out to the right, and I believe it was Bo Nix was able to find him for an easy score, because there was a linebacker who actually got on him, but I think that linebacker was like 6'2", so it was pretty much like taking candy from a baby. So that's definitely going to be his calling card of the NFL. Even like I said, even if he doesn't work out as your traditional tight end, a guy that big, that long, with a little bit of juice to him, just a little bit, just enough to keep you satisfied, that's a special teams ace. Whether it's in field goal, punt. If he can shred a block, maybe field goal and punt block too. And that's also for him that at that height with 33, almost 33 and a half inch arms, that's your onside recovery team as well. I definitely see Brevan getting his name called probably in the 5th, just because of all of those things that he could do on teams. And then you add in like, okay, I can also put this guy in the red zone. And hell, just stand up and put your arms up and then just catch the ball, because there's not going to be too many defenders at his height that aren't defensive ends trying to rush the passer that are going to be able to contest him for the ball, unless they can just really, really jump high. What would you say, Brian? 5th round?
Yeah, something like that. Like I said, there's a bunch of tight ends that are all kind of clumped in the same area, like the 4th, 5th, 6th round area. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, 5th round sounds about right.
5th round, I like it. That's probably going to be the end for the Packers range, but we're gonna move on. Well, actually, this next guy, he might be. That's Florida State's Jaheim Bell. I was really excited for Bell, and then he went to the combine and he measured 6'1". I don't know at 6'1". Can you even be called a tight end at 6'1"? Bell may be a fullback at this point, or maybe I don't know if he can. Well, he didn't run that fast, but he may have to lose weight. He was at 6'2"?
6'2" at the combine, yeah.
Okay, I had him at like 6'1" and like 7/8.
That was the Senior Bowl.
The Senior Bowl? Okay, that was all right. So I guess he grew in like a month. But even still, I don't know if do you really have is that really a tight end at 6'2"? Is that even a tight end? It's like I said, I mean, his name might get called as a tight end. I don't know he's definitely not a Y. He's, definitely an H. Like I said, he's got some speed to his game. Hands aren't great. I don't even want to say hands are good. Hands are decent. I'm gonna leave it at decent. Not saying he can't catch, but there's definitely some concentration drops. And even though FSU did go essentially undefeated before the playoffs, you just imagine what that offense could have been if he was just a little bit better catching the ball with the plays that he did make. I think just off of the height alone, he did test pretty well. Which was expected because he's the smaller, compact back, or tight end, I should say, just at over 8'4". Had he been taller, he probably would have tested into the 9s, but the lack of length is going to hurt him. Brian, where would you project him? I'm thinking he's probably somewhere in the back of the 5th, maybe in the mid 6, just because he's going to have to be schemed to get to the ball. How would you put him?
I like him a lot. I have questions whether the Packers would actually take him, but with that being said, I still like him a lot. He came in at 241, so a good weight. Senior Bowl, he was like 230, I think, or something like that. So, he came in a good weight. And he actually had surprisingly long arms for being 6'2". He came at 33 inch arms, so that's pretty long arms. And he said had a 4.6 140, so he tested fast. But like I said, the thing I like about him is his versatility. I kind of see him as a Brock Bowers light, because you can put him in the backfield as H-back. You can put him in the backfield even as a running back. When he was at South Carolina this last year in 2022, they actually played him at running back for like half of the season. And he actually looked pretty decent at running back. I wouldn't make him a full-time running back anyway, or a full-time fullback even, really. But he can do it. Like you can give him the ball and short yardage down to get you a yard, 2 yards, maybe 3. And I think his hands are okay. He's an okay runner. Route runner and stuff like that. I think he's just, like I said, he's kind of like Brock Bowers in the sense of he's a guy you kind of scheme him. You move him around, like I said, give him some carries, put him as a fullback, put him as H-back, put him occasionally as a tight end. So that you can move around, and he had like 500 yards receiving this past year, so that's pretty decent. Touchdown production wasn't great, but between the 20s, he's a guy you can use in different packages, and you can move him around and just do different, interesting, kind of fun stuff with him. And I think even some people will be surprised when they see him carry the ball. They'll be like, "Wait, what?" And they're like, "Oh, shoot, this guy can actually carry the ball a little bit."
Yeah, I think the Kyle Juszczyk role, if that exists in an offense, is probably his best projection. Obviously at that size, he's probably not going to be the run blocker you want in line. But yeah, lead blocker, maybe some snaps, maybe like a power, ISO type run, things of that nature. That might be in his future. I did forget about the South Carolina resume, so that does actually add to him his value. Beauty is going to be in the eye of the holder for Jaheim Bell. I really hope for him to find success as a Florida man myself. It's just going to be, he's going to have to get into the right system. But if he does, he'll definitely be on my fantasy football team. So, catches, runs, possibly scores. Yeah, he'll be on my reserve. But moving on, we've got Southern Utah. Started at Southern Utah, now's at Arizona, and that is Tanner McLachlan. McLachlan is similar to the aforementioned Reiman. Tested really well as not quite as well, just over 9.1. But the tape does not show the athleticism. not a lot, necessarily a lot of, well, decent production. I don't say not a lot, but decent production. I mean, he did play at Arizona, and Arizona is Arizona. So I don't know. I don't know where McLachlan. I think McLachlan is probably solidly in the 6. It just, like I said, the testing may give him a little boost to the mid, maybe early 6. Again, this is where you're looking for your special teams players, your TE3, what have you. And then with hope, maybe McLachlan, if that athleticism can surface, maybe you might have a backup reserve tight end, in the future. What would you say, Brian?
Yeah, I think he kind of went underrated, kind of underdeveloped, or whatever you want to call it. Because he originally came from Canada. That's why he ended up at Southern Utah, because nobody knew who he was and knew anything about him. But then he redshirted in 2018. He didn't really play much in 2019. He did for like 2-3 years. He basically barely played. I think mostly because it was just, he was new to the position, new to the football kind of. But he showed, he's been an okay blocker. But this past season, he showed some flashes as a receiver, as maybe there might be some more potential there, or upside as a receiver. He had, I had the numbers here a second ago. Sorry, I lost it where it was. But well, anyway, he showed some flashes as a receiver this past season. So I think someone may see him as a potential developmental pick again. But yeah, 6th round probably. Yeah, you probably starts out playing special teams and stuff like that, and number 3 tight end type thing, and then see if you can develop them.
Yeah, the Canada thing, despite having the CFL, like 90% of those athletes still come from America. So being an actual true Canadian, there's probably a little bit of a learning curve that is still yet to be experienced by Tanner. And then again, Arizona, kind of a mid-major at this point. We'll see how they do in the Big 12, moving forward. But the testing, again, I think testing boosts, especially when you're over a 9, it does boost. And then, like, if teams do their homework, they'll understand, like, hey, this is not a guy for tomorrow. This is a guy, 3-4 years down the road. So we'll certainly have to look and see if that learning curve does do something for Tanner where he finds success.
Yep.
So rounding out into the late rounds, we have Kansas State's Ben Sinnott. I was a little bit higher on Sinnott starting out, but and actually he did test very well as well. Actually, he's the number 3 tight end for testing at just over a 9.7. But being a bit of a receiver myself, Sinnott kind of had some struggles as far as finding when I say finding the ball, but finding the open in the zone. Route running was a little shoddy. I think he was depending on, I guess, his athleticism to get open. And again, like a lot of these tight ends, that athleticism showed up here and there, and didn't consistently show up. But he did produce. So it's kind of like, I'm kind of all over the place with this projection. It's like, okay, there's some athleticism here, then it's not there. Then there's times when he should have caught the ball. He didn't catch the ball because I don't know if he ran the wrong route or he just, I don't know who his route running coach is, but they should probably go back to high school. I don't know what to do with Ben Sinnott. I would like to say that because of the projection or the production, he should project somewhere higher into the 5th, but I think I'm going to leave him in the 6th, Brian, unless you say otherwise.
Yeah, I like him more than that. I think I could see him going, and again, depending on, because again, he's in kind of that clump with a lot of the other tight ends where he can go really anywhere in day 3, but I think he could go either 4th or 5th round. Some people have compared him to, he's like the term I think they called it is a super DeGuara. They said he's like Josiah DeGuara, but like better, more athletic, and he's a little bit bigger and all that type of stuff. So the thing is, they're thinking is like he can be used like DeGuara was used, but he'll actually produce and be better and do a better job of it, which I can see. I think he's a better overall athlete than DeGuara, although the speed's about the same. But he can play some H-back, he can play some tight end. He'll get physical, he'll block. He's a good blocker. You can get a little bit after the catch, not a lot, but you get a little after the catch. And the receiving's not bad. I think his route running is okay, and as a receiver is okay. I think it's just the offense he played in, and his quarterback and the guys around him just wasn't a lot of talent. He's not the guy you want carrying your team, and I think he was kind of almost had to carry that offense, and so I think that kind of hurt him a bit. But as like a number 3 type tight end, and like I said, you can use him H back and stuff like that. I think he would be a good role for him.
I can go with that. Kansas State did not have a lot. I think most of their weapons left last year.
They didn't have.
Yeah, okay. That's fair.
Yeah. They lost Howard transferred out too, so
that's true. He's like a dink and dunk to me, like 3 yards, 5 yards, maybe 7. He's not going to run away from anybody. At least not on the tape that I saw. He's not going to run away from anybody. So you say 4th or 5th. I'm leaving him in the 6th. I don't know. I'm not convinced. Well, I mean, the production says maybe, but I'm just not there yet, Brian. We'll see. We'll see what the buzz says later on down the line.